Hello, hello, hello. We're back in the lady layer, and we're making this video today because we want to talk to you guys about 4 tips to designing your tiny house, or 4 things to consider as you're designing your tiny house. And these are really critical things that we kind of ran into
along
the way. A few of them we got right the first time, a couple of them we completely botched, so we'll kind of talk about how that happened as we go along. So the first one, and Taylor came up with this like right from the get-go, was having your must-haves like figured out. Mm-hmm. I need to drink some water. Okay. Little macadamia nut right there. So writing out your must-haves. So why don't you tell them how you kind of came up with this idea and what it entailed?
So initially, I didn't want to live in a tiny house. Like, I was like, point blank period, it's not happening, we're not doing it. And we kind of, I'm sure we'll make a video about it later, kind of like talk about it along our journey with you guys. But I was pretty much like, it's not happening, we're not doing it. And then we came to the point where it was like, it's the best decision to make for right now. So when we were talking about creating this tiny house, I had decided if we were going to do this, we had to put the things inside of the house that would make it comfortable, that would make it beautiful, that would make it feel good. I think I said it a million times, like, I want the space to feel good. Like, I just kept telling him over and over again, like, that doesn't feel good. But that doesn't feel good. Like, we need it to feel good.
Yeah.
So
Taylor is very aesthetic oriented. You know, she comes up with the design. I try and figure out how to make it happen. So, you know, there's some obvious things when you're building any kind of house that you have to have, right? You got to have a bathroom. You got to have a kitchen. You got to have a place to sleep. I guess optionally, you could have a place to sit and hang out, you know, like a living room. I've seen some tiny homes that just don't have that, and they rely on the outdoor space to be their living room. Mm-hmm. But we're going to be in a climate where, you know, it could be 0 degrees, it could be 100 degrees, so you're going to want that year-round comfort inside. So we definitely need a nice living space inside. So big priorities for us were a good-sized bathroom, you know, not a cramped little thing with tiny little corner toilets and corner vanities and corner.
Because for me, I have to have a place to get ready. I have to have a place to do my makeup. I have to have a place to do my hair. And we've been inside of my parents' motorhome, and we've been inside of his parents' motorhome, and both of them were too small for me to feel comfortable getting ready.
Right, yeah, makeup, hair tools, all that kind of stuff, it just takes up space while you're doing it. I mean, you can pack it away and you can put it in drawers and all that kind of stuff when you're not using it, but when you're actually doing it in the morning, it takes up quite a bit of space. Mm-hmm. So a decent-sized bathroom was big for us. We love cooking. So
our cooking space, like, was probably the biggest decision, like one of the biggest. What do we want our kitchen to
right
like?
And we kind of went through a few different ideas, and we really drew a lot of inspiration from other tiny house designs out there, and it really came, I think, from the Escher design. I think I'm saying that right, where they had a double-sided like galley kitchen. So that's really kind of what we liked. Instead of the kitchen taking up one whole side of the house, you do a smaller section, but it's double-sided. So then you can kind of segment the spaces around. And then the other one was a comfortable, nice sleeping space. And this one was tougher for us. And we'll get into, in part 2 and part 3, the tips 2 and 3, we'll kind of talk about the different designs that we went through and why things worked for us and why they didn't. But I'll suffice to say right now, we did not want lofts. Like, we wanted a loft-free tiny house. We
In
wanted
the beginning, yeah.
full height ceilings, all that kind of stuff, and we'll kind of talk about in a few minutes why that didn't work out. What are some other big priorities that we had?
So I really wanted a romantic feeling bedroom, a welcoming bedroom. I think as a married couple, like that's really important to us, and I've done a lot of research in healthy relationships, and keeping that space really tranquil and really relaxing and welcoming is really important. So that was important to me.
Yeah.
And then it was really important to me that we had I know we kind of already talked about this, but like a really good feeling, tranquil feeling bathroom. So I really wanted to have a bathtub, which is something that you see pretty rarely in tiny houses.
Yeah, it's usually a corner shower. It's kind of like a secondary thought. They want to make it as small as possible, as light as possible. But
and then when you do see them having bathtubs, they're like this small, and they're like, right. You have to be like this inside of it.
It's like, it might be a converted, horse trough or something like that, like galvanized horse trough, which... some people really like that rustic look. It's just not our style. Ours is more like modern farmhouse, elegant kind of thing. So we're going with a full-size toilet, full-size bathtub, full-size vanity, full-size pretty much everything. Another huge one for Taylor was a closet, and trying to figure out, okay, well, if we're trying to keep the bedroom area as purposeful as possible toward sleeping and being relaxed and things like that, then we can't have a bunch of drawers and hanging stuff and all that kind of things in the bedroom. So what we did was the opposite loft above the bathroom is just going to be 100% function built for being a closet. So it's going to be storage up there. It's going to be really nice. Have built-in cabinets and all that kind of stuff for clothing. Yeah. And then the other big thing for us was light, making things light. So a lot of whites, a lot of windows, things like that. We wanted a really bright space. Mm-hmm. So those are really our must-haves, and I think in our final design we really accomplished all of those as best we could with the size of the trailer that we got. So our second big tip for you guys is just draw a million drawings. I mean, there's going to be so many different combinations of things that you want to put into a tiny house that it's going to take sheet after sheet after sheet of paper to kind of figure out, is this design going to work for me? Is this design going to work for me? Are my priorities, are my must-haves going to fit in this design? And this really isn't the time to build it on the computer yet, to do it in 3D software of some sort, because again, you're going through so many different concepts that you could spend hours doing one concept on the computer and then throw it away because it doesn't work and have to start all over again. So really just, 2D on graph paper. Graph paper is really good because you can make it everything to scale. Mm-hmm. So I really recommend doing that, $3 or $4 for a pad of graph paper.
And what we did is we kind of like took some of the things that we knew we would have, like the size of the tub. We had decided what kind of size we thought would fit, so we would measure out on the graph paper whatever dimensions worked for the dimensions of the house that we had drawn out, and we would cut it out and lay it down, and then we would like cut out the size of the bed that we thought that we would use and put it down. And so all of those little elements we would put in and see how they fit together.
Right. And you don't have to cut it out. I mean, if you want to just redraw it every single time, you can do that. Mm-hmm. But figure out some of what your required dimensions are. What's your refrigerator size going to be? What's your toilet size? What's your sink, your kitchen sink? How big is your bed? All of those things that really aren't going to change from version to version to version. Figure out what those fixed sizes are, so then you can each time you redraw it, you can fit those in and see how they orient, and really measure everything. So you'll be surprised that you're thinking something only needs to be this big, and then you go measure it and you're like, whoa, that is like not even close to what I thought. Standard countertop heights, standard countertop depths, standard sinks, standard refrigerators, standard stoves. They all have very standard dimensions, unless you decide to go for an apartment fridge and a really small sink and a 2-burner stove and things like that, which we didn't decide to do. We decided to go full size.
But even if you did decide to go smaller, knowing those dimensions and putting those dimensions in and seeing if that works for you, I think is really important.
Yeah, it is.
And also, one thing about what Brian is saying is so true, because there were times that I was drawing it out, but when we were very first talking about the whole idea, and I was like, oh, I guess that this is going to be like 4 boxes on my thing, and this is going to be 6 or whatever. And then, let's just say, I thought that the shower would be like 4 boxes. And Brian was like, no, look at our shower. This is this long and this wide.
Right.
And if it was only this big, I wouldn't even be able to put my arms out to wash my hair. And so things like that are really important. You want to make sure you have all of your dimensions right.
Right. Yeah, and try not to go out of the norm. So or there are some things where if you try and get an uncommon size of something, you're really going to like start making things harder for yourself when it comes to building. So, if you're going to put a shower in, get a standard 30-inch shower, get a standard 36-inch shower, something like that. Because when you try and put like shower doors on it or something like that, and you come up with some weird dimension, you're going to end up spending a ton of money on custom glass. Because you're not buying something off the shelf. So
if they even buy glass.
I mean, these are just things that there are things that if you decide to go custom on certain dimensions, that they might bite you down the road because you can't find the parts that you need off the shelf, and you have to have something custom made.
So our tip number 3 is to lay it out, walk around, and see how the space feels. Right.
So when we first were thinking about going tiny, we were actually considering about building a tiny house on a foundation. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, how are we going to figure out how this space works? So what we did is we went and got some of those landscape flags and landscape tape. And that's kind of like what you see sometimes at the park if they're putting new plumbing in. It's like these little stakes that go on the ground, and they have like a
pink
neon
flags.
Yeah, like they make them in pink and yellow and green and all kinds of different colors.
Okay.
But basically it's just like neon neon flags and neon tape that's not sticky. It's kind of like a streamer. And we just stuck those, we went to the park, stuck them in the ground, kind of drew the house out and just stood in it and tried to get an idea of how it felt. So when we decided to change gears and move to a tiny house on wheels, we kind of just took that same concept and shrunk it down. And, it's just like you have probably seen on some of the TV shows that cover tiny house building. A lot of the people put down painter's tape inside their existing house to try and figure out how things are going to move around. And it worked really well for us because you can take a piece of tape, pick it up, move a wall or move a toilet or move the sink or whatever. So you can really come up with like, say you've been drawing on your graph paper and there's like 2 or 3 designs that you can't decide between. You're like, I don't know if I want the kitchen here, or do I want a loft, do I not want a loft, that kind of stuff. And we struggled a little bit with a couple different designs. I liked one better and she liked this other one better. So putting it really on the ground and standing in it helped a lot. Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a space that's big enough to be able to lay it out inside, like he said, you can do it outside, but if you don't have a space outside or you don't
do it in the wind.
Yeah. Or the weather isn't permitting. Another tip that we have is just to ask somebody else that maybe has a larger house if you could let them
go over there for a day.
Let you use their space for a little bit.
Yeah. They also make if you say you own some property or whatever, you can get the spray paint, the landscaping spray paint, and you can kind of spray the perimeter. I wouldn't recommend spraying the interior parts because then it would make it hard to change. But if you spray out the overall trailer dimensions, then you can kind of work with something else for the interior pieces, and that'll kind of help you get a concept. And the whole purpose of this is once you stand inside the space and you look at what your boundaries are, it's really a reality check of this is really how big our house is going to be, and think about all the things that we have to fit in this tiny little space, and how are we going to do it so it doesn't look cluttered. And that was a big thing for us because our entire concept, we wanted to be clean, elegant, modern, semi-modern.
Yeah, and just, like you don't want to feel cramped.
Yeah.
Was a big thing for us. We didn't, even though we're going small, we didn't want to feel like
we want open spaces, basically. Yeah. And the last part of tip number 3 is use exact measurements. Again, once again, use exact measurements. Don't think, I think the fridge is going to be this big or whatever. Use exact measurements, so then it's not a guessing game.
Right.
Once you start building.
Right, because once you get into building and you're actually doing everything, you don't want to start moving stuff into the space and be like, oh no, my bathtub doesn't fit now, or my bed doesn't fit. Like, I didn't make the loft big enough for the bed to fit, or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So.
And when you start plumbing and running electrical and all that kind of stuff, exact measurements count, because you don't want to put in your rough-in plumbing to where you think your sink is going to be, and then end up with your sink 12 to 18 inches away from that, and your plumbing is completely off layout. Right. So that's tip number 3. Tip number 4,
which is like our biggest tip.
We messed up on it.
Yeah.
We messed up on it.
Yeah.
And that is, trailers have wheel wells. All right. So we went through a whole layout design.
We had multiple layouts, and we were trying to decide which one we wanted to use. And we had taped everything out on the floor. We had heated discussions about which layout we were going to do and where things needed to be put. We had multiple nights of discussions, and Brian would go to work the next day and come home, and we'd have another discussion about it.
Actually, I would come home and everything would be moved. It's like, what do you think about this idea? And the whole living room's moved around. But it's the thing that we came down to is we came to a decision of like, this is what the layout looks like, and we liked it. We had the kitchen on one side of the trailer, we had the bathroom on the other side of the trailer, and we had
no loft.
We had the living room be a convertible space, so it would convert from being a living room to bedroom using a Murphy bed. And it was great. Like we thought we had a nice design that would have, open ceilings across the entire trailer. And then it just hit me that the wheel wells have to go in. And here's where the wheel wells go, and they are big, man. And so,
not just big lengthwise, but big coming into your space.
Yeah, and they're tall. So like if you're having anything that's height dependent, because you have to build these boxes basically around the wheel wells on the interior space. And basically what that ended up doing was we had to move the front door so that the front door wasn't over the wheel well. And when we figured out the Murphy bed situation, we would basically have to raise the Murphy bed up 10 inches to clear the wheel well, which means when it's folded down, the bed's 10 inches higher than it normally would be, which is a little bit awkward. It'd be like a king's bed that you're trying to like jump into. And it also it completely took over the space, and we'd end up having to play musical chairs with all of our regular furniture every time we wanted to put the Murphy bed down. So once we put the wheel wells in, we kind of like pulled all the other tape up, and we just started all over again. And we ended up with a space with lofts because we needed these spaces inside to be dedicated and not have to move things around to repurpose the space.
So for you, make sure that you know where those are as you're starting from the very beginning. when you're first drawing things out, make sure you know where those are, and then you can imagine what that space is going to look like with those there, and if whatever you're trying to put in would actually work there or not.
So those are our 4 tips for you when you go to design your tiny house. If you like this video, press the like button. We encourage you to write comments to us because we really want to hear what you guys are up to and what you think of these 4 tips. And definitely subscribe and turn on the notifications.
Thank you for watching. Bye.
See ya.
See ya.
See ya.